Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It's Thursday, July 16th. Welcome to our Facebook Live conversation. Today our topic is one of the issues that we haven't talked about quite as much as others. In the age of COVID, we've been speaking about the public health crisis that's been with us since March. We've talked a bit about our financial problems that stem out of the shutdown of the society because of COVID-19. We've also talked about the rise of the issue of racial justice in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd. But today we're going to talk about an issue that comes back to us every 10 years, and that's the Decennial Census, Census 2020, where all across the United States, the U.S. Census Bureau is taking a head count of the people who live in this country, and specifically for our purposes, here in Westchester County, in the municipalities and county-wide. In the past census, we found ourselves just shy of 1 million people, but when we drive the streets of Westchester, we believe that there are 1 million people in this county, and we need to have those numbers counted. We're going to talk a little bit about why that's important. Our guests today are our Commissioner of Planning, Norma Drummond, and our Assistant to the County Executive, Blanca Lopez, who has the portfolio for census issues, amongst other things. We've tried to make a public case for the census in a host of different ways, and one of them is to reach out through the media. And we have here a new TV spot that's showing on social media and perhaps on some of the TV stations, wherever we have it placed. And we think it's kind of a way to reach through and talk a little bit about the importance of Census 2020. Hi, I'm County Executive George Latimer. 40% of Westchester residents think they don't matter. Don't be one of them. Fill out the census. Completing your household census form helps Westchester residents get counted and enables us to receive billions in state and federal funding that is allocated based on population. It's quick and easy, and help is available in many languages. For more information, visit our website or give us a call. We'll talk a little bit with Norma and Blanca now about our strategies here in Westchester County and how it devolves down to the different communities. Norma, you're not a marketing executive, but that's a wonderful depiction, we think, of getting a message across. As a planning professional who's devoted much of your time in housing, what's the importance of Census 2020? Why is this so important for us to put a focus on?
So good morning, and thank you for having me here today, because you're right, Census 2020 is extremely important for the county and for the county's future for the next 10 years. So the census itself it's counting a number of things. It's counting people, but it's counting some basic information about those folks as well. But it's also counting our housing units and whether those housing units are occupied or vacant. So it's important for the municipalities to know how many people they're serving and how many services they actually need to plan for to provide, as well as getting an accurate count of all of our housing units.
And Blanca, from your perspective, there are areas in the county that have been more difficult to count for a variety of different reasons, demographic and otherwise. What are some of the challenges we have in getting an accurate count in a place like Westchester with its diversity?
Sure. So as you mentioned, Westchester County is extremely diverse, and we have to do a lot of outreach to our county residents in many different ways. We have, unfortunately, a lot of pockets within our county that have hard to reach or hard to count populations. Our immigrant population, our friends and neighbors whose English may not be their first language. We also have a lot of our families and county residents who may be disabled and may not be able to participate in the census. We also want to make sure that people can access the census, even though in this particular census you can do it online. You can also call the Census Bureau and participate over the phone, or wait until you receive your census questionnaire. So we do have a diverse population, and we have to provide many different ways to be able to access and give them the information they need.
And I gather the COVID crisis has created a real problem for us in being able to outreach to people. So some of the tools of contact aren't available to us.
Correct. So we have, there's, as I mentioned before, there's access to the internet that may not be available to everyone. We have to make sure that people see our ads and our census messaging on bus stops and buses, bus shelters. We also have to make sure that we keep talking about the census, and what better way than somebody who has already completed their census. They become a census ambassador. They can then share their experience with their friends and neighbors to be able to know how they've done it, what questions are asked, and how they can participate.
And Norma, when we originally saw the calendar, the timeline for the census, it was going to be completed by July 31st, and it assumed that we would be in the door-to-door phase sometime in mid-May.
Right.
All of that is lost because of COVID. I guess the good news is that the timeline has been extended till October 31st, but we haven't yet gotten to the door knocking standpoint. How are we doing so far as you look at the numbers, as you compare it to 2010 and to what your expectations are?
So overall, the county is just over 63%. We are better by a full percentage point than the United States. The United States national rate is 62.1%. And we're about 5% better than New York State is doing. So we're watching very closely every day. I get the reports about how we're doing and how we compare with other places. There are still counties in New York State that haven't even hit 50%. So all in all, I believe we're doing quite well. But many of the initiatives that we had planned a year ago, because we did start planning for this in April 1st with our Complete Count Committee of last year, so many of the activities that we planned suddenly just became not effective anymore. We put advertising on all the buses, and then suddenly people were not taking the buses. So we had planned all these census hubs. Suddenly we couldn't get people together to have those sorts of events anymore. So we had to totally rethink how we thought about doing and connecting with people. So we've been working now with a couple different advertising things. We did submit bookmarks. We put these out to our senior centers, to the school kids, to make sure that kids got the message, because sometimes kids are our best ambassadors. We most recently have done door hangs that folks can actually go. They don't even have to talk to folks, but they can go hang them in our multifamily and our public housing buildings. They can just leave them on the doors, and then this one, everybody gets a nice friendly reminder, and they're in English on one side and Spanish on the other. And then, Blanca has a couple of the other activities that we've done as well.
We have new Census Fliers. And this one really is to motivate people to participate. The first one that we launched about a year ago really had to do with promoting awareness, but this one is more about, okay, the census is here, how can you participate, what are the ways you can participate, and to make sure that you and your household count.
Now, I know that we've got a number of communities that have already exceeded their 2010 goal, about 7 of them already, and they would fall into the category of the smaller villages and towns spread out around the county. Pelham Manor in the southeast part of the county has hit their goal and exceeded. Hastings on Hudson, Croton on Hudson, Lewisboro, a couple of other similar communities, Pleasantville, I believe. But even in communities that have a high degree of wealth, a high degree of education, we still haven't hit 80% response. So is the expectation that that 70 range is what we would hope for all communities? Is that the realistic range? If we can get all of them up to that level?
So the county right now at our 63.1%, we are about 4.8% away from where we were in 2010.
As an aggregate county?
Yes, exactly. Collectively, how we did. So for us to get to 70% this time around really would exceed what we did in 2010. So that would be a really good response for us. But yeah, there are some municipalities that getting to 60% is going to be a great milestone for them. There are areas of this county that do not have good access to internet. And if there are areas there are a lot of senior apartment buildings, and so getting into the seniors' homes, who right now they don't want to answer their doors for folks. So there's going to be a lot of each municipality, as we've talked about many times. Each municipality is going to have its own unique set of issues and circumstances so that the marketing that we do, it's not what's going to work countywide is not going to work in each municipality. We have to adjust it for what really will hit each of those areas.
And I gather that the area of growth, the area where we can achieve more in terms of percentage of completion, are in the larger communities where there's a larger population of people that are less wealthy, that those are the areas where that effort has to be made. And you pointed out, Blanca, a little bit about the language situation. But just in general, folks who are scrapping to survive are less worried about filling out a census or doing anything else other than just survival. And we have plans to do that. Have there been a good effort at the local level? Do we see a lot of local municipal census organizations, and are they carrying the ball? Because prior to this year, and I have been in public office through 3 prior census takings, I've never seen the energy like this. and hopefully you think that's a result. But are there good local committees, Blanca, out there?
Absolutely. Our local complete count committees, I think right now there's probably between 21 to 24 different complete count committees that have been created throughout the past year. I'm happy to say that Portchester, for example, had the first complete count committee that was put together over a year ago, and they've been working extremely hard to make sure that they get the word out and to, again, be able to make sure that people are counted. Unfortunately, because of COVID, this has kind of thrown a curveball at their planning and the activities that they wanted to do. And there's been a lot of creativity in terms of how to continue to address and reach out to people.
Right.
So through phone banking, text banking, social media has played an important role in this as well, in making sure that people are still talking about the census, even though we are living through a pandemic, even though we're trying to figure out how do we move forward. The discussion on census is extremely important, and we continue to talk about it. And I think the local complete count committees have done very well in terms of messaging. They have their census thermometers in the center of town so people see it. They are putting signs out. So it's in many different ways. It's very critical that people continue to know that the census is still happening, that it doesn't just happen April 1st,
Right.
but it happens up until October 31st. Now, the Bureau extended it for another 3 months from the July 31st deadline. And we have to keep this conversation going. And I think the local complete count committees have played an instrumental role in moving the conversation forward.
Now, in the past, the traditional, perception of the census is there's a guy with a clipboard, and he walks down this side of the street, and he
Right.
comes up the other side of the street, he rings every doorbell, and he's dealing in a single-family home type of setting where mom answers the door and tells you dad and the 3 kids or whatever it is, and that's sort of the classic census situation. This year, I gather, was the first time that we had the online capabilities.
Yes.
But to this point, all we've had is online, telephone, and mail opportunities without the door knocking. Are you surprised, Norma, because you've been here for a while and you've seen prior census, as have I, were you surprised that we've had such a good response with online, phone, and mail?
Yes, because actually the internet-only response has been really, really good in Westchester, which really shouldn't surprise us because there is such a high educated base here in the county, and access to technology is available in many, many places. But there were definitely senior citizens and veterans who just said, I want my paper form, because for 50 and 60 years,
So
that's
you've
what
done
they
it for all
filled
years,
out.
yeah, all
Right.
years of life.
That's what they expected, and so that's what they just felt more comfortable doing, not worrying about whether it was going through or not on the internet.
And not just this year, but in other years past. You get a certain amount of people who just say, you're asking me questions I just don't want to answer, for whatever reason. It may be I consider it personally intrusive to ask a demographic question, or maybe I want to be off the grid in some way, for whatever reason that might be, good or bad. Is that sort of a bumper that you run into at some level, and why we never get 100%?
Yes, and probably the most frequent question is, why would I want to tell anybody that I live alone? Particularly our senior citizens. Why would I want to tell anybody I live alone? So, we do have to get that across, that the data that the Census Bureau collects is so confidential.
Right.
They can't share it with us, and we're a census affiliate. We use this data. They can't share it with the municipalities. Many of the municipalities have asked, can you tell me which houses haven't responded yet? The
Right.
data is not available. They don't let that information out. Only the census takers themselves will ever have that information.
Right.
So they've gone to great lengths to be able to protect the information that they collect, but there's always going to be certain people who are not willing to release any information.
Right.
And it's also important to note that the Census Bureau cannot share this data with other federal departments as well.
Right.
So the data is protected and it's confidential. So everybody needs to understand that and be able to participate.
Let's remind everybody that the census is used as a basis for grantsmanship. You served on the Portchester School Board. You were president of the school board for a term. You've been, a grantswoman in so many different ways in your current capacity. How essential is having an accurate and complete census in the process of getting education funding and getting other funding?
It's extremely important because that is how federal funding is distributed based on census data. And we have to make sure that people understand that census data is accurate data. The decennial census data is accurate data. So in order to receive the amount of money that communities such as Portchester or other municipalities should receive is based on how many people actually participate in the census. If we see communities that are below their self-response rate and compared to, let's say, in 2010, those resources are now going to other communities who are now above their 2010 self-response rate. So communities are missing out in terms of getting their fair share of federal funding. It is estimated that there's about $880 billion from it's a number from the George Washington Institute that is spread across the federal government. And these departments and these programs look at census data to determine how much money will go to our counties, our states, our municipalities, school districts, police and fire departments. So it's extremely critical that we have an accurate count.
Well, and also the second major element of this, and this I'll address, is the issue of political representation.
Yes.
We have in legislative bodies, and I served in 3 of them, that are districted: Westchester County Legislature, New York State Assembly, New York State Senate. And by law, one person, one vote requires that each of these districts be within a certain percentage of the same population. Well, the population is based on the census, and the Census Bureau may make estimates over the period of time between census taking, but when the redistricting is done, it's always done once every 10 years, and it's done immediately after the census data comes out. So whatever it shows, if in Westchester County, the average county legislative district is in around 55,000 people per. If your community is undercounted by 7,000 people, you have that much less presence within the district to influence who the legislator is that represents your interests. The Assembly roughly runs about 130,000 people per district. In Westchester County, that's in the vicinity of 7.5 Assembly districts, which is important in terms of its weight in the New York State Assembly of 150 people. And in the New York State Senate, we have the equivalent of about 3 full Senate districts in Westchester County. A Senate district has run traditionally about 310,000 people. Again, if we're 1,900,000 some odd, then we have 3 full districts and slightly more of another one. And then, of course, where I have not served, in the House of Representatives, and that may be the most important of all, where you have influence on the national allocation of dollars and also the policies that follow those things. Right now, Westchester County probably is a full congressional district and then a significant part of a second district. Now, when they draw the lines, we may have pieces of 4 districts,
right,
of any of these things, but in terms of its overall weight, a Westchester County at 980,000 people and a Westchester County of 1,100,000 people are 2 very fundamentally different levels of power that you would have and deal with each of these. So we don't know how COVID is going to play out. We don't know what the governor will or won't allow for in going forward. But let's assume that as we're having this conversation in the middle of July, things by the middle of August are better, whatever better means. And we're ready to do more things in August, and most importantly, we're ready to do more things in September. What are the things that you see us doing that would really help us get this last little kick of numbers to get them up?
So most importantly is probably at this point actually helping people complete the census. T-Mobile donated to the county 200 of these tablets, so they've been powered, and technology, our IT department made them so that when you power on, the only icon that comes up is the census website.
Right.
So they are directed.
You're not going to be able to look for baseball scores once
exactly.
baseball is back. Okay.
So we're giving these out to our nonprofit partners, to our municipalities, so that if there's a destination where folks are going to, they stop in our social services office to look for assistance, we're going to give them the opportunity to complete the census in those places. If they're going to be looking for any kind of housing assistance or any kind of, they're going to a food distribution or any sort, we're going to have tablets available and staff available to actually help them complete the census, bilingual staff as well, because we recognize that that's certainly important. So at this point, the best thing that we can do is actually be available in all the places that we can with our nonprofit partners to make sure that we're actually actually giving people the opportunity to complete the census right then and there. The PSA that you just saw is running on TV, News 12, and a couple other stations for the next 3 weeks. So, we're going to have hundreds of playings of that. We're actually also playing that PSA at the movie at Kensico Dam on Friday night, and then again in August, and then at the Playland movies when I get the dates of that, we'll get that scheduled as well. But we have people, and with the local complete accounts that are also helping us, going out and handing out the door hangs and giving out information about the
They're
census.
that exciting. They jump right out of your head.
So, we're really just, it's a matter of making sure that
Right.
people have the information. How do I respond? And these cards give them the census, they give them the website, give them the phone number if they're more comfortable calling, so that they really have direct access to. At this point, it's so important for people to just respond.
And just to be clear about what the census asks and what it does not ask, there are scams out there. There
Correct.
are people that constantly want our personal data so they can do bad things with it, basically charge things to us
Right.
or make us the debtor to their expenditures. The census, Blanca, will not ask you your Social Security number.
Correct.
The census will not ask you for your mother's birth date or some password that they think would open themselves to your accounts.
Correct.
What are the types of questions the census will ask?
So it will ask about how many people live in your housing unit. It will ask you what type of housing unit you live in. It'll ask about your gender, and not just yours, but every member in the household. So that person is who's responding to the census is responding for every person in their household as well.
And one person on behalf of the household can be the
Correct.
respondent.
Correct.
Yes.
And the total questions are it's 10 questions. And it'll also ask you for as I said, the number of people, your race, your gender, your date of birth. And it will also ask you if you want somebody from the Census Bureau to call you. And if so, you can put your phone number there. And as a matter of fact, the Census Bureau right now is having a quality check. So people who have responded to the census may be receiving phone calls from representatives from the Census Bureau asking them about their experience. How did it go? Did they have any questions? If they did, where did they go and find the responses to those questions? So to take that census, it will probably take about 10 minutes or less. And there is that 10-10-10 slogan. So it's 10 questions, 10 minutes or less. And the answers to these questions will impact your community for the next 10 years. So it's really important that people understand that it's very quick and easy to fill out your census form.
Let me give you each a chance to make a closing pitch or a closing comment as part of this. Blanca?
So I think as we are, as you had alluded before, as we are talking about reopening the county and reopening schools, now more than ever, the census plays such an important role in this, because reopening means costs. Right, so we have to make sure that we have enough funding to reopen our schools, to address our public transportation, new protocols that they will have to abide by. And by people participating in the census, it will help alleviate some of those costs that will be extremely important as we try to reopen in the next months ahead.
Norma, you get the last word.
So the data that we're going to be collecting this time around is just going to be so critical to establish the baseline that we will be using for the next 10 years. Based on 2020, for the next 10 years, we'll just be estimating based on the growth in building permits and other things that will happen in each community. So it's so critically important for us to get a really solid baseline for the use of that for district redistricting purposes, and for the funding sources that are going to be coming into the county. And just really for studies about the types of services that we have or don't have within our local municipalities and our governments should really focus on where we need to go from here.
We've been talking with Norma Drummond, who is our Commissioner of Planning for Westchester County, and Blanca Lopez, who's Assistant to the County Executive and a Minister of many portfolios. You may see her being interviewed in the future on criminal justice issues or housing issues and so forth. But ladies, you've been doing a terrific job. The numbers that already show that we're ahead of other places and we're ahead of the state and the feds, I think is a good sign of your hard work. Hopefully, between now and October 31st, we'll get everybody out there to fill out the census. I did do it online. It was 10 minutes, a little less than that. It was very easy. It was not obtrusive. The link is very easy to find, mycensus2020.gov. I think it is. My2020census.gov. And you could, if you haven't filled out the census, you could click this off and turn that on, and in 10 minutes' time, you too would be part of completing the census. So thank you both very much, ladies. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. We're not doing Facebook Lives every day as we did during the heart of the COVID crisis, but we're still in the middle of fighting the COVID-19 virus. We'll have sessions like this on a variety of topics, including COVID, over the course of the next few weeks, just to keep that extra little link going. Every Mondays we have updates at 2 o'clock about the status of the virus. And should we see a rise in the issue, we will restart the more regular reporting. But we're trying very hard to have both an attack on the public health issue and as much normalcy as we can. So thank you very much for watching. Have a good day and stay safe.